Famously, Nabokov said, or infamously, perhaps it's now a synonym for that too, said, there is only one school of writing, that of talent. And it's axiomatic that you can't teach talent. Of course you can't. But what you can do is instill certain principles. And the avoidance of ugly repetition is very important. Repetition has its uses, and anything is better than trying to avoid repetition through what they call elegant variation. This is an example from a biography of Lincoln. While in Chicago, he appeared to back concessions to the South. In New York, he seemed to support, there's no point in using a different word when there's no change in meaning. And that's just something that the writer was taught when they were 12, never to use a word twice in a sentence. And they've become terrorized by that and then addicted to a new ingenuity where you avoid it. But I'm talking more about sounds and rhythms. The Nabokov novel we know of as Invitation to a Beheading was originally called, not for very long, Invitation to an Execution. Now, as Nabokov said, of course I avoided the repetition of the suffix, so chose to call it Invitation to a Beheading, rather than Invitation to an Execution, which is sort of rhythmically ugly. You've got to think about the bits of the word as well as the word in its totality. Avoiding repetition of prefixes and suffixes, as well as rhymes and half rhymes, unintentional alliteration, etc., can be achieved by anyone simply by using a dictionary. And a thesaurus. People think thesauruses are there so you can look up a fancy word for big or a fancy word for long. That's not what a thesaurus is for, in my view. Thesaurus is, you come to a point in a sentence, and it's usually towards the end of a sentence, where you're unhappy with the word you've chosen, not because of its meaning, but because of its rhythm. And you may want a monosyllable for this concept, or you may want a trisyllable. So you look in the thesaurus, you find a simile that has the right number, for the whole sentence to maintain its rhythmical integrity. And you just do that by going to your thesaurus. And also going to your dictionary. Do not use words against their derivation. For example, dilapidate. It's fine to talk about a dilapidated building, but not fine to talk about a dilapidated hedge, because dilapidate comes from lapis, which means stone. So, a really careful writer will make sure that they're not doing not visiting an indecorum on the word's derivation. It's very labor intensive. It takes a long time sometimes to get your sentence right, rhythmically, and to clear the main words in it from misuse. And all you're winning is the respect of other serious writers. But I think that's any amount of effort is worth it for that. And it's easy enough to find alternatives without committing the dreadful sin of elegant variation. And it just involves you in looking at reference books for a couple of minutes. I look in the dictionary. I check words in the dictionary a dozen times a day at least. And you find out very strange and interesting things. And for instance, that widow originally meant just empty. It's an adjective meaning empty. Now, that's part of your, when you look up a word in the dictionary, you own it. in a way you didn't before. You know what it comes from, and you know its exact meaning. And whenever I do that, when I do it all the time, it's as if you feel a grey cell being born in your head, a little addition to your store of knowledge. And while all the other cells are dying in a kind of genocide of the aging process, you can restore it, and that's what it feels like, and it fortifies you.